Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks for this opportunity to talk to all of you. Verizon's been at the AI game for a little while. Like everybody else, beginning the journey with things that are predictive. So you can sort of predict next customer actions, propensity, that sort of thing. Moving on to things that are descriptive, that using AI can describe things that are happening to customers or to employees, and now moving into generative. So the generative part, so to put it in sort of lay terms, the predictive is sort of like, here's my current bill, what's my next bill going to be? The descriptive would be, explain my bill, tell me what's happening on the bill so that I can understand it better. And then the generative is, tell me how I can lower my bill, which is a bigger challenge. Sorry, I can't help you with that one, but maybe AI can. But I lead technology, digital, and AI for Verizon Business. I've had the good fortune of assembling a team that includes technologists, as well as people that I've scraped together to create an AI accelerator. So I'm living a lot of the things that you all are talking about, and I'm hoping to share some of our learning here, okay? Oh, I think I have the clicker. No human remote for this one. So yeah, the rising tide, this is no news to all of you. AI is everywhere. In case you wanted to have a presentation that was not about AI, this is not it. So yes, a lot happening in our world. We're talking about agents, we're talking about agentic, we're talking about tools and creative spaces that actually allow you to create these agents. Airtable is one example, but Google and others are creating entire work tools that can help you create agents at scale. Agent Space from Google, for example. We use all of them, as it turns out. We're a big enough company that I guess we end up working with all of these. So we have learning in a variety of these dimensions, but we're all learning together. And then the number of agents and the amount of spending on AI is expected to grow. For anybody that thinks they can predict the future sitting here today on how many agents are going to be in the world 3 years from now, please don't buy this bet. Make your own bets. And candidly, I think this is way underestimating what this world of agents is going to look like. But you do have prognostications about what the future will be. But at the same time, we're starting to see some gains. So you have, even judging from studies that S&P did just a little while ago, companies are starting to see some returns from AI. A lot of it comes from cost reduction efforts. Some of it comes from revenue gain. So AI is starting to show some returns, actual return on investment that is in the ballpark of what companies had estimated. That's not true across the board. These are averages coming from a survey, but there are positive gains and people are starting to sort of see some return from things. And there are across functions, and you should be happy to see marketing on the far left of this in terms of total return from AI. You may not be able to relate to this, a lot of us can't, but there are companies out there that are actually succeeding in deploying AI at scale to yield and realize value. I would have thought customer service is on the far left, but I was interested to see this. But we're also seeing some big shifts that are starting to happen, right? Demand is shifting. For those of us that have been in this digital and demand space for a little while, search is fundamentally shifting. There's entire companies that are now being created because of this shift. You probably talked to one of them just outside. And that's because the nature of what we're doing in our demand journeys as customers, consumers, is also shifting. So demand is certainly shifting from search, which has been the predominant generator of demand, last click or otherwise, and that's moving into the generative world, and that's scaring a lot of content creators, and it's scaring a lot of marketers because the future is a little bit uncertain. Trust is shifting. So yes, we are, on the one hand, as users of generative AI, we're starting to implicitly trust the results of these large language models, which is scary in its own way. Whether you're taking medical advice or career advice, you better think a little bit and read a little more. But as brands, we're also going to have to deal with customers who are trusting AI's answers much more than they were even a year ago. Hallucinations are kind of not in the conversation as much today as they were even a year ago. Content provenance matters a lot more, which means whereas AI can somehow create massive varieties and types of content that you consume, you're also seeing a rise in questions about, well, who made that? Can I trust them? So this notion of brands owning content provenance is still, not still, but risingly sort of really, really important. And by the way, content quantity, for those of us that are in creating content for demand, quantity of content is mattering a lot more than quality. Yes, quality still matters. And then we still want the keys. As humans, we realize that we're much happier when these agents have some human interference or approval or some intentionality that we're driving the actions of AI agents. So we're still very much in the mode of human in the loop. And that's the way we want it today. We'll see what the future holds. And yeah, you're starting to see the other end of this hype cycle. The valuations are just stupid when you think about how much companies that are investing in building AI, they've grown incredibly fast. And you're starting to see some sort of cracks open up, and people are more openly talking about ROI. This is the MIT study that I'm sure every one of you has read. Only 5% of companies seeing value. And then this is the classic hype cycle, and if you distributed AI products and solutions along this, there's a whole bunch of them that are in that decline, disillusionment cycle. So yes, we're starting to ask the right questions about AI. And so is this, not is it real, but what part of it is actually going to be of value? And where do I spend my money, my time for myself as well as for my company? So I'm going to try and see if I can answer a couple of these from the perspective of what we've done here at Verizon. And here's some of the reasons why. A lot of us are actually focused on automating the present. This is a core problem with one of the first steps we do. When we see challenges and frictions, we're trying to find ways to actually make it faster. Yes, it takes a long time to read a lot of research and read competitive and read campaign analytics and create a brief. Why don't we take 5 tasks and combine them and make it faster? Salespeople do the same. If I'm building a quote or sending an order. AI tools often stand alone. So if you create a tool for quoting and another tool for ordering, and the two don't sort of talk to one another, then you've created things at cross purposes. And quite often we're talking about creating AI agents or tools that are relatively discrete, disconnected. And that creates significant problems when they don't read the same data or don't understand where the customer is in a sequence, et cetera. And part of the reason is because the underlying data and the systems are disconnected, which means if you haven't solved that problem, the AI you're creating on the basis of these data are not going to talk to one another. So this creates a pretty obvious solution. Hey, if you haven't disconnected your data, don't build agents that are completely disconnected unless you really have intentionality. You know what you're doing. And then lastly, we aren't ready. No matter what you say, we're still exchanging ideas and thinking about and reading about what AI is doing. Trust me, all of our teams and candidly our leaders are doing the same thing. So this is a shared learning journey, and we're still really entering that very first stage. So for us, unless we find ways to solve joint together, learning together and sort of thinking through this together, we're not really ready for turning a world of agents loose on our own teams. So let's see how we can address some of this. 5 strategies to drive some change starting now. First, a lot of doubt about AI. Your CFO is not ready to put a lot of money into AI. And most of you, talking to you even over the last couple of hours, have CEOs that are doubting whether this is real. If you want to be an advocate, and hopefully you are, because the agents of change are candidly in this room, you have to start by finding the avenues where you can really start to prove the value. There are plenty of use cases in our daily work that can allow you to start proving the value for yourself, for your teams, and certainly then to your leaders. So I think starting this is important while you build a foundation. First, highest value current use cases. We've heard plenty just this morning. Leverage existing tools and tech. Yes, there are AI products and tools out there, but by the time you go buy a product, it may be outmoded. So it's very difficult in this day and age to buy a set of AI tools and decide, well, that's perfect for us. So I think it's important to know what your use cases are and then figure out what you're solving. Near-term ROI use cases for a lot of companies focus on call reduction, customer Q&A, creating chatbots for the website, taking simple orders and processing them, producing quotes, generating emails, simple content creation. this is pretty, in a sense, simple stuff given what we're hearing about as capabilities for AI. Find those use cases that have higher return on investment, meaning generate time to market or generate cost reductions, or ideally both. Third-party AI products are absolutely needed, but I would start with tests and proofs of concept before you put lots of money down. Build the foundations for AI at scale. Now, this is easy, this is hard stuff, guys, but at the same time, if you think about building agents, find the ones that can actually add value more than the use case that you just talked about. So knowing more use cases is actually better than knowing fewer, so that you're able to imagine a future where singular capabilities can be leveraged in many places, so your cost of building something is it's got ROI from the standpoint of places you can deploy them. So for example, if you're using AI for content creation, yes, you can use it to write white papers or your blog, perhaps even your PR, but you can also use it to write sales pitches. Underlying this is the same underlying capability that reads product specs, understands market segments and the customer needs, and then figures out how to create content that is right for that context. But that sort of agent, if it's tuned right, can work across marketing, sales, and potentially service to answer questions about how the product works. That's sort of an example, right? You need an ROI framework. So from the very beginning, think about whether you're measuring return based on increased yield on marketing spend, ROAS was talked about this morning, or cost reduction, agency cost spend, or any wage, non-wage costs that you've got that you're associating with it. The best way to do it is to do both. Know where your units of costs are, know what attributable outcomes are there that you can affect, so you can actually talk about yield against cost that you're hopefully trying to change the equation. Because if you have your way, you'll do both. You'll lower cost and increase outcomes, right? Architect for agentic, which means when you build it in a way that these agents can actually talk to one another and work together or in sequence. To me, that's the future, and it's not that far away. So building single-purpose agents that are going to work, this is what happens when you buy highly productized AI solutions. But if you buy the right things, or if you build the right things, you will build them in an architecture that hopefully can expand, that can accommodate many agents working either in sequence or together, so that you can get more complex tasks done faster. Third, drive learning, experimentation, adoption. I can't say enough about this. So I didn't have a playbook on how to do this AI thing. I found the smartest guy on the team and said, do you want to lead an AI acceleration team for us? Okay, can I get headcount? No, you can't. So we're all going through this journey, and it's fine to have a set of change agents, people that are actually reading, have a point of view, and actually have the technical chops to define requirements and pass it on to your technology teams, or to potentially figure out what to build internally. They become the enablers. The change agents are many of you. You can actually decide what change is good and not good, and then figure out how to sequence the change. You have the ability to influence leaders, but also decide how change can help the company. To me, this is sort of getting educated together, knowing how to initiate change, drive it, but also empower the change within your teams, secure investment, pool some technical capabilities so that you're able to create accelerators to speed up proofs of concept, people that are a bit more open to experimenting, driving change, and potentially it acts as a career accelerator too. It's very difficult to educate an entire team, entire organization, get consensus to move forward on speeding something up, particularly at the speed at which AI is going. So I've debated quite a bit about this, and generally when it comes to fast-moving tech, you're better off creating empowered teams that are going to act as sort of glass breakers in a sense, and then hopefully you can figure out how to get some of those capabilities democratized as time goes. So strategy 2, put AI in the workflow. How many times have you heard about workflow today, right? This is perhaps the biggest thing you can take away from today is if AI is not embedded in the work that we do today, adoption stinks. So I'll give you an example, but maybe I'll do that and then I'll jump in. So one of the early things that we built was something as simple as search the knowledge base before you answer a customer question for sales guys. And the reason we built it for sales is because in a sense it's safer than exposing the knowledge base to customers. Because as for a lot of you, Verizon's a highly regulated company. I was speaking with someone over lunch about fidelity, not unusual for regulated companies to say, no way generative AI output is going in front of customers. So guess what? We put it in front of salespeople and customer service agents. So we created an entire knowledge base aggregator, pooled, I don't know how many different sources of internal data, promotions and pricing and eligibility criteria, product information, all of this stuff into one knowledge base, created an AI query agent. You would think it's easy for us to get them to use it. Not so much. Because if it's not in the work that they're doing, showing up in exactly the same place as every other knowledge-based query is happening, it doesn't get used. It's the same for us as marketers, so we'll talk about this. So this is just a simple workflow diagram, but whether it's a salesperson running a query, a service person running a query to answer a customer question, or a customer asking a question, if you don't put it in the place where they are actually using the workflow, it generally doesn't work. And we've done this with trying out for quoting, writing quotes for customers, building orders for customers, running knowledge-based searches, you name it. And I'll give you one of my best examples. We spent a lot of energy and time building a sales agent, sales assistant basically, that is able to listen to salespeople having dialogues with customers, in real time provide recommendations, and also take some inputs, both verbal inputs as well as audio inputs, so that the salesperson's getting a real-time guide. Pretty slick, if you know what I mean, if I could get salespeople to use it. Because it ended up on Salesforce and in their quoting systems as a little button that they had to go click. No way would they click that button. So yeah, a lot of training, a lot of push from the top, thou shalt and everything. It doesn't work, right? So now we have to redesign this thing so that it actually sits in the actual screens in Salesforce. And now once it's done and I can vet it and I make sure it works, then I can actually take this thing and put it in front of customers in a different way, because I will have had salespeople actually vet it and test it. So to me, these are very simple examples that you've got to think about how work is actually done if you want to transform it. Strategy 3, design omnichannel from day one. This means your customer truths happen across a span of time, across many touches that are discrete, that you don't often track. And connecting these truths about the customer is virtually impossible for most of us. So what the customer told a chat agent this morning is different than what they told a call center agent. But in theory, those two humans have the same knowledge base, but they often don't. And what that customer did on the website is still different. So figuring out how to connect things omni-channel becomes very core. And we are trying very, very hard to try and make these connections on a daily basis. So let's see. Here's some things that we're doing that may help. When we do, let's say, Verizon's big into promotions. If you haven't bought a cell phone recently, it's all about those promos. But if you go to channel A and channel B, if you go to a retail store versus you call the chat rep and you go online, you should ideally get the exact same promotion and offer. The customer's response or non-response to these interactions is not easy to record and figure out if you need to provide a bigger promotion or a smaller one the next time they contact you. So that's a very simple example of having an omni-channel view of how optimized promotions could work. Because in a world of next best promo, next best action, next best experience, having that real-time knowledge of what the customer said or did becomes huge in providing the next action for that customer, no matter where she touches you the next time, right? So to me, this sort of use case of offer optimization is crucial in at least the Verizon world. Unified customer insights is hugely important as well. So a customer who has called into the call center this morning, distressed about some connection that was broken or not working, is not going to be the sort of customer that you're going to pitch when they call in. So having connected insights, real time ideally, helps you know that customer was distressed this morning. Please don't make an outbound call. Hold that email that sends a sales solicitation. So this gives huge value to customer empathy and realizing whether you're on the right page or not. And I talked to you a little bit earlier about sales pitches that are aligned to marketing content. It seems pretty basic. If you think about the core content that describes who you are, what you make, and why you should buy, right? This is the brand, the product, and the value proposition. These are usually done by marketing teams, for marketing teams as well as for sales teams, and sometimes for sales and support teams as well. This content quite often gets fragmented. It gets aged. It gets orphaned. So content management at the core becomes a huge asset because this core content base becomes the place where you originate content using AI for different use cases, whether it is a sales campaign or a marketing campaign. So creating sales pitches aligned to marketing content is a dream for most of us marketers. Can you get the sales guy to say the same thing as marketing is advertising, right? To me, that core of this is unifying where your content sits and the rules on deploying the content, but also as you build agents, the agents think the same way and leverage the same underlying content so that the truths about the brand and the product end up being the same. Customer handling functions, which means the customer says, my product's not working, or some other issue, the way you handle those questions can be based on the same underlying product truths. They're also hopefully connected to the customer truths. What actual product did they buy? I was listening to someone talk about one of the biggest challenges in call centers, inbound calls, is just knowing what the customer bought, what version of a product they've got. Quite often, for those of us that have complex product suites, a good 15, 20 minutes is spent just knowing what product the customer has. I was in a CTO roundtable last week where this exact thing was discussed. But if you had greater ability to discern customer needs and connect that to underlying product truths, you can answer questions a lot faster. NBX is a way that we do a lot of decisioning on the edge, but not everything is real time. But we'd like for these to be derived from the same customer 360. So we've spent a lot of energy connecting customer service, customer behavior data on the web, and certainly our purchase history all together into one common. It's not done, not all of it is real time, some of it is batch. It's a journey, but that takes a significant amount of effort and investment for us. And then on the service side, real-time customer context matters. So knowing that you've got a pissed off customer is very, very important because sales, more and more companies, sorry, not sales, a lot of companies are thinking about service centers as revenue centers. It's very tempting because you've got a set of humans who are actually talking live to customers who may actually be willing to buy. So it's very tempting to turn service interactions into sales interactions. So a lot of us are actually experimenting with this, but knowing context in real time is so important. That goes back to the same underlying customer truths, customer 360s. So you see these things emerging where core data assets about connecting customer data, connecting content, etc., comes to yield value in many, many places, and you can design omni-channel journeys that is actually reliant on the same truths across the board. Fourth, get data and platforms in order. That's probably the hardest thing, easiest thing to say, hardest thing to do. The obvious thing here is unify your data, for crying out loud. And yeah, marketers have been trying this for 30, 40 years, unifying data. For somehow it's that elusive goal that we're still trying, but we'll continue to try this. I think candidly, it's overwrought because we overcomplicate unifying data. If you even just start, forget the ad tech stack connecting to the MarTech stack, connecting to customer service and the other, connect solely customer data so that your highest valued assets, who are your paying customers, you have the maximum knowledge of. And then you can add the ad tech stack and the unknowns, just the cookie prospects that don't have booked as customers yet. Those can come later, but you can actually connect all of these through a really robust modern CDP. But having a single source of truth about your customers becomes crucial. What is their account value? Do we agree on LTV metrics? These sorts of things become crucial because these are the core pieces of data upon which you're going to make decisions on whether to invest on that customer, invest in the agents that automate the customer's journey, and so on. Build open architecture. Modular solutions are way better. So API native companies and cloud native companies or products work a lot better together because they're designed to work better together. So when you make technology choices, make sure that you think about openness standards. If you're not a technologist, make sure you have trusted advisors in this space. Yes, play with partners, but know how to ask the right questions of them. This is crucial. Security and ethics are crucial with AI. And security doesn't just mean what data gets exposed to LLMs. It's also what data gets exposed to which employees. Because when you lose sight of that, particularly when you're building these complex agents, you very quickly have a compliance problem because particularly if you sell to public sector or in any other regulated space, you very quickly run into a lack of transparency on who built this, for whom, what data does it use, what goes into this model. So transparency of the data use rule set and your standards for security on who might access or not access what types of data become quite crucial, particularly if you want to grow up using these agents or scale using these agents really fast. Stakeholders need to get educated on this too. And lastly, evolve your team. So this is just a chart I made up for giggles to see across a variety of functions, analytics, experience, all the way to events, which sorts of things are ready for AI. So I was getting some giggles out of Kalen in the Airtable presentation. He talked about events being actually highly suited for agents. Event prep, event marketing, yes, but an actual event, something like this, I think still requires some humans in the space. That's why we put it there, but you can, the purpose of the slide is to say you can do templates like this to decide which part of your marketing organization has greater potential to be used for transformation in the nearer term. The reason analytics is at the top is because it's relatively deterministic. You kind of know what data is there and what your truths are, and what you want to do is automate access to those truths and the correlations that are hidden within those truths. So using semantic business intelligence, where you can actually use queries like words to ask questions, is actually productized highly today, and you can actually adopt it fairly quickly. So going all the way from there to event, I think is a journey, but I think if you even focused on the first 2 or 3, you will make a lot of progress. So in summary, a few places to start. Start with simpler opportunities to generate value. Chatbots are everywhere, so it's not illogical for us to begin there, to even do simple things internally to exchange ideas, for example. Content creation, analytics, relatively lower hurdle use cases. Pick the workflows to fix. Don't try to solve everything at once. Find where the real issues are for your team. Where do you get stuck routinely? Is it approval cycles? Is it brief creation? And then those are the ones you go to fix and treat them as proofs of concept, because when you do a team effort to solve a problem, the team has immense learning in a very short amount of time. So I think it's worth creating fairly short sprints for solving hard problems because you learn really fast. The purpose is learning, not just to solve the problem. And I think that learning quickly expands across the organization. Start the data unification journey. Customer 360 to me is the basic, and you have to get it done. If you're late to this, start it now. Unify in the cloud because it becomes accessible to more API native solutions. Single source is the key, which means if multiple people say there's different versions of customer value in our company, well, guess what? I think you've got to solve that. Embrace the change. So I think you've got to figure out how you lead this journey as marketing leaders, so that you have a point of view and you're reading, you're educating, not just by reading, listening to podcasts, hopefully by talking to the people and listening who are actually in your company and want to influence you. I think this becomes a joint journey the moment we start talking and listening a little bit more to one another. So I think this is a crucial joint learning that we all go through. AI can unlock all of this and then more. Our single biggest asset, in case you're wondering, is our creativity. And this is the one thing AI hasn't quite figured out how to do. It hasn't thought about what you haven't thought about yet. So my closing thought, creativity is our provenance. It's the reason we became marketers. Okay, so own it. AI can actually unlock more of it through some of these things that I've talked about. I've got 5.5 minutes, I believe, so, oh, that's my title, okay. I'm ready for any questions. Thank you. Anybody?
Thank you. I know I sat with you at lunch, so it's based on something you said at lunch. Um, what did you actually build your DAM on? Because it sounds like you have some customization that allows your agents to communicate better. How did you build that?
We haven't fully built it yet. We've got a mix between seismic, um, I think variety of shared drives, which is the enemy for most of us, and Adobe DAM. Adobe has most of the creative assets, design assets. Seismic has a lot of the selling assets, but shared drives have a lot of meat that goes. And Gabriella in the first row used to work on our team. She lived this every day, but yeah. So building one unified DAM is something we're working on now, and I was trading thoughts with you on our journey to get there. Yeah. You get your steps in. Yeah.
So this is great, Kris, and I was taking a lot of pictures. I think a lot of folks were. I was really intrigued when you were talking just a few slides ago about building kind of these AI incubators almost within. And I'm curious at Verizon maybe how that's played out. So you get your sort of superstars or change makers, and then how do you scale that?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, it's still early days in this, right? So our AI accelerator is just a team of like 7, 8 people, but highly empowered. We picked people that were drawn from different disciplines. So I had the head of that team has a product background and has built complex things to meet user requirements over a period of time and has gained some credibility. But the people who work for her came from sales, so they can speak the language. They came from customer service, came from marketing and heavy-duty sort of MarTech, and a few others. So what I've tried to do is infuse multidisciplinary focus and not just AI for its own sake, so that they have the ability to influence one another, but crucially, they have the ability to listen and adapt. They've just rolled out the first few rounds of products, and they're super impressive. So now they're in the phase where everybody is asking for, I want my own. So they're in this, we're taking a lot of demands from even our CEO. So last month's review with my CEO, he said, hey, I'm gonna go meet with fill in the blank, Satya. And I would love something that tells me the top 10 things I need to know before I go, so that I'll know what's our relationship with Microsoft like, where are the challenges, where are the opportunities. Can you build an AI for me for that? Well, guess what? We're actually doing it, but it's a version of the same thing that we're building for a sales guy that's pitching Microsoft. Because the underlying truths and capabilities are the same, it's just tuned differently. Going back to my point about multi-use agents. So we're trying to scale it by understanding use cases, prioritizing them based on, yes, if CEO asks, you do it. But for everybody else, you evaluate using ROI. And then we're trying very, very hard to do weekly calls, which I call AI forums, lunches, what have you, where we do demos for one another and we allow anybody to come and present. So if you've got a better idea, have at it. It's not the providence of this one team that says, I own AI, absolutely not. If you've got a better idea, a better solution that you've seen, bring it. So it democratizes participation and hopefully synergizes the work. We're not there yet, but we've made a lot of progress.
Thanks. Hi, Kris. Quick question. You talked a little bit about the pace of change and deploying new products and capabilities. And one of the challenges that I've struggled with, and I'd love to get your perspective, is that you choose a technology today to solve a particular issue. And very quickly, you find in 3 months or 4 months, there is a newer, better solution. With you, from a scale and size of a company, how are you looking at that? What is the framework that you're looking at before deploying a capability?
Yeah, it's a constant struggle in technology, whether you think about buying a software suite that's going to be right for the company for the next 7, 8 years, or if you're thinking about deploying an AI agent that's good for the next 6 months. Fundamentally, technology choice comes down to having a reasonably clear view of the near future demands so that you have a reasonably good chance of meeting those demands with the technology investment you're making. But it's a crapshoot. So the best thing we can do as marketers is to have a decent view of the phasing of demand, but knowing how the technology is going to solve the need is much more difficult. So hopefully, when you make those investments, it gives you a bit of flexibility in a couple of ways. One is an open enough architecture that you can actually pull one out, put another one in, which is the approach Verizon's taking. Or number two, partnering with a company that you have high confidence in, that their pace of scaling technology is relatively fast to adapt, but also they don't charge you every time they have a new widget, which is candidly self-defeating, because if you have to pay for new releases or new features, then you'll outmode yourself and you become very quickly disenfranchised. So we want to find, that's why I talk about openness. When our architects design for openness, it means the data is accessible through a variety of APIs. The core APIs that we have can be accessible in many places. Yes, we have our preferred architectures, but we're pushing really hard to drive openness so that from the inside as well as from the out. These things help a little bit, but ultimately there are hard choices because a company selling to you ultimately wants predictable revenue for 2 to 3 years. But what you can get in return is some promises for product advancement, meeting your needs for the predictable future. And that's always a fine balance. So knowing your needs better and having some sort of ability to negotiate through longer term commitments or clarity on openness could really help you balance this. There's no magic bullet. Good. Thank you. Thanks.